What the world? Check, 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 check. All right, y'all. Um, um, sorry for the uh late um notification. I was gonna wait on it, but I'm just like, might as well do class. So tonight's topic is slavery is inevitable. Happy Sabbath, y'all. Most High in Christ bless. Um, the I guess the climate out, like oftentimes whenever we go somewhere, like let's say even in I guess so much in the past too. Like when we go somewhere, I always think about Matthew 16. Always, like if you were in front of like it's always a good opener to camp. I haven't used it in a while, but wherever you may go, it's interesting because um, it can be like a. It's usually, I guess, it works best with the like kind of chaos. Like if you were to go to a concert, I remember we went to I think it was the Baby concert or something in Florida like a couple years ago, and you see like the mass of people moving um like it's just in single file, like kind of following everything that everybody else is doing. Right? There was a for those that do know, um, there's one of my favorite bands of all time, right? Is Dave Matthews Band, right? And they had a song called "Ants Marching In" or "Ants Marching," and I think the picture of the top part of the like the thumbnail of the song is like it's like the video or a picture over a city, right? And you look down and you see people moving, like going to work or doing whatever on everyday life. And it reminds you of ants, right? Marching, like you just see them moving in single file lines. If you were to be high enough, it just looks like they're doing the same thing over and over again. And Matthew 16 works so well because it's always kind of like a great icebreaker because it's like you ask, like, does anybody understand like the sign of the times? Like, are you paying attention to what's happening? And most people aren't. I mean, that's kind of why we out there. Um, but it gets to the point where it would seem, I guess, to some those in the know would seem obvious, but obviously it's not. um, it's no less frightening though. Doesn't really matter how many times you see it. Um, the way things shift on a day to day basis is scary because you kind of see what's coming, but other people are just like, like it's 2006. They just kind of move in the same way, and it's sad, but this is kind of what the description of the end times will look like anyway. So we're here. Um, but it is something to pay attention to if you care. Those that are supposed to be in the know, we have to kind of keep an eye, a watchful eye, continue to go to the street and tell people about it because it's our job, but it's having to care for the people as well. Even though it seems like a kind of a very monotonous task to do over and over again, but you know, again, this is kind of told to us how it was supposed to be. It doesn't necessarily stop the job. You hope as the time goes on that people repent, right? So, slavery is inevitable. Lord's will, the topic will start to kind of show itself as we go. Let's open up in Matthew 6. Try not to be too long. Matthew chapter Matthew chapter 6. Matthew chapter 6 verse 24. It says, "No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve God and mammon." Though many people attempt to every single day. Well, at least they believe they are, right? But you can't serve two masters, right? And there's a very it's something very implicit in this verse, and Lord's will kind of come back on it later, right? Um, but the Lord makes this statement for a particular reason. Mammon being money or finances, right? But this kind of stretches, the theme of this stretches all over the scriptures and all over our life and everyday situation. But people don't pay attention to it, right? But we'll hopefully we'll circle back to this, right? Verse 25. "Therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat or what ye shall drink, nor yet for your body, what ye shall put on. Is not the life more than meat, and the body than raiment? Behold, the fowls of the air," right? So the Lord gives this description of, don't you're not supposed to be putting too much effort into the things that most people put effort into, right? They stand in front of a mirror for hours. Most people kind of value themselves off of what type of name brand of clothes they have. They measure themselves and their worth by the things that they wear, where they might be going, their concerns for tomorrow, all these different things. And all of us kind of get wrapped up in it because this is kind of everyday life. It's tough. It's very difficult to and this is the reason why I find it so interesting on Christ. You never see him out of the spirit, right? But it seems impossible. It's not, but it seems impossible because you might be able to be in the spirit. You feel like it for like a day, if that long, maybe a few hours, and then something catches you off. You're not even paying attention to it. Something catches you off guard, and you lose it for a second, and then you kind of reel yourself back in. You're just like, oh, okay. But the overarching theme, as Christ is always explaining, as he understood so well, is like you shouldn't be too concerned with all these different things that are kind of pointless. Like your main goal should be focused on what's going up, what the Father is doing up above, and showing us through everyday people, through conversations, through events, through the news, whatever it is. We paying attention to these things that really matter because all this is shaping up into, we get to the final time or the final judgment, I should say. So don't take thought for your life for the things you should eat and you should drink. Pay attention to other things. And he gives a comparison in verse 26. "Behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are ye not much better than they? Which of you, by taking thought, can add 1 cubit unto his stature?" And this is fascinating because it's all of us see birds every single day, right? Every day. Shalom, Yoel. Happy Sabbath, man. Most High in Christ bless. You can't go a day stepping outside somewhere or hearing it or going somewhere without seeing birds. It really doesn't happen, right? But we think nothing of it, even though this is a daily reminder of how we should be kind of processing life as it comes, right? Because things change from day to day. Certain things repeat itself, and that's kind of where you get caught at. When you see things happening over and over again, it's just like, you don't think too much of it. But this is very important to pay attention to because even though birds sometimes, you got people out there that bird watch. Some people don't care, right? They just see it. They got crap on their car, whatever it may be. But you're not paying attention to the genius of the design. And this is something you can go into of like the humility or the care that the Lord has for his people. because he's reminding you every single day, even though it just gets to a point where it's like I've seen it Monday, Tuesday, one day, Wednesday, it's kind of old. But this is something you need to pay attention to all the time because it's a mindset you should have, which is hard to maintain. But it should be that should be your goal to maintain this thought process. When you look at the birds, we know they're a part of creation, and we know that the Lord has more reverence for his people than we do the birds, yet the Lord takes care of them every single day. Every single day the Lord takes care of them because there's a significant difference between needs and wants. And we oftentimes, we kind of conflate those two and we think one for the other, but it's not necessarily true. But sometimes in everyday life, it's hard to keep these things straight. But with that being said, the understanding needs to be who can add something to his cubit, right? There's no matter what you do or what you say or where you go or how many days pass, you are not in control, right? I'm not talking about the person committing sin and being like, "Oh, it's just my nature." That's not what I mean. What I mean is the grand scheme of things. You don't have sole control over things, right? Your own life and different things happening. But the way things play out in life, you don't have control, right? Control is just an illusion. It's a dream. It's a lie. It's dangerous because even though control is an illusion, it feels so real at times, right? If it's it feels so real, but if it's packaged in a way, it sells the best. Like if you know how to craft it and kind of put it in a certain light, people will eat it up like every single day, right? We see this stuff on television. We see all these other things, right? Take control of your finances, right? Take control of your future. Take control of X, Y, and Z. Take control of this. It's an illusion. The Most High is the one that's in control. But these are the things that we forget. And you don't like when you remember, even in Genesis, right? It's the way the serpent packaged that to Eve. Don't you can be like God, right? You can understand and experience good versus evil. You have a whole different perception on life if you partake in this fruit, right? That's what you need to do to get you to have the best the best feeling in the opening of your mind to explore all avenues, right? Because that's the best way to live life, which is couldn't be further from the truth, right? Let's go to Acts chapter 22. Acts chapter 22. Uh, let's start at 19. Acts chapter 22, verse 19. It says, "And I said, Lord, they know that I imprisoned and beat every synagogue, them that believed on thee. And when the blood of thy martyr Stephen was shed, I also was standing by, and consenting unto his death, and kept the raiment of them that slew him." So this is like, I think, Paul's second explanation at conversion. I think so. Anyway, Paul's essentially giving the explanation of how he was converted, right? He's giving this speech and the things that he went through on the road to Damascus. He's dealing with the death of Stephen being the martyr and him being stoned to death and Paul being consenting to it, right? He's explaining all these different things. But we know at the time, as Paul starts to work for the Lord, like doing it the right way, the Jews wanted to kill him, right? Because they felt like he was switching things up. He was changing doctrine. He was going against what he was taught from a young age, which isn't true. Nonetheless, they believe this. So this is his explanation of his conversion. Verse 21. "And he said unto them, Depart, for I will send thee far hence unto the Gentiles." So this is the Lord, I think in Acts 9 was telling Paul this, right? And they gave him audience unto this word, and then lifted up their voices and said, Away with such a fellow from the earth, for it is not fit that he should live. And as they cried out and cast off their clothes and threw dust in the air, the chief captain commanded him to be brought into the castle, and bade that he should be examined by scourging, that he might know wherefore they cried so against him. And as they bound him with thongs, Paul said unto the centurion that stood by, watch this, is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman and uncondemned? Verse 26. When the centurion heard that, he went and told the chief captain, saying, Take heed what thou doest, for this man is a Roman. Then the chief captain came and said unto him, Tell me, art thou a Roman? He said, Yea. Verse 28. And the chief captain answered, With a great sum obtained I this freedom. And Paul said, But I was freeborn. Then straightway they departed from him, which should have examined him. And the chief captain also was afraid, after he knew that he was a Roman, and because he had bound him. Now, this is what we want to take away from this, right? Verse 28 says, And the chief captain answered, With a great sum obtained I this freedom. And Paul said, But I was freeborn. Now, a wise statement from Paul, wisdom displayed, because he understood the gravity of making known that he was a Roman citizen, right? Because there were certain ways that you would deal with a citizen outside of something that wasn't a citizen. He's explaining, I was freeborn. This is how I got this citizenship. The other man saying, I paid a handsome amount of money for this. This is how I obtained my freedom. How is it that you got this, right? This is something we want to take away from this. Remember, this is Rome. The exact same markers, like I keep seeing these things. The way America's going, it's inevitable because it's already written. But the way America's going, everybody keeps referencing Rome. Look how Rome fell. What were the precursors to let you know that the empire was collapsing? What was it looking like? How do we look at the things that happened at the time, and then how do we reverse it? Right? They're hoping that they can, kind of stop the flood, which is not really going to happen. But it doesn't. They still have the mind and the heart to do it, right? Which would tell you a lot about the people in that place. They love it so much they want to uphold it, right? And then you think a lot of people that are just like, they love Rome or they love America, but they'll do things like, they'll just think that the system itself isn't corrupt. We need to make some tweaks here and there. We need to get rid of a couple things like, LGBTQ, whatever fits anybody's agenda. It's such a sliding scale between people and what they consider to be freedom, right? But this man makes a claim and says, I've paid a handsome amount of money to get this. Paul wisely responds in invoking his right as a Roman because he knows that he is under certain privileges that a person can't execute on him because he is a citizen. But Paul conversely, let's go to 2 Timothy 2. Paul conversely says this in the later chapters, years later, or his letter to Timothy. Second Timothy 2 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 8. It says, Be not thou therefore ashamed of the testimony of our Lord, nor of me his prisoner, but be thou partaker of the afflictions of the gospel, according to the power of God, who have saved us and called us with an holy calling, not according to our works, but according to his own purpose and grace, which was given us in Christ Jesus before the world began. So these seem to be very two conflicting ideologies in a sense. If somebody were to look at it, because Acts is specifically talking about citizenship, but the idea of freedom paints the definition I guess certain characteristics hit on what a person will consider to be freedom, right? You might ask 15 different people, and I'm sure certain principles within their definition of freedom are going to more or less seem like they've kind of had this conversation ahead of time, because most people think freedom means a universal thing in a lot of different aspects, right? If I can do this, I'm free. If I can do X, Y, and Z, I'm free. And usually they'll take these different things and then they'll compare and contrast these things to other countries. Well, look, over there they can't do this, but over here we can. Over there they hate us because we're free, right? And this man says this in Acts 22. I've paid a lot of money for this freedom, right? Whatever that means in his eyes. But this is no different from the past to now. Paul is explaining, which seems to be somewhat conflicting. He was born a Roman citizen, right? So he has certain freedoms, but he's not confused on what his definition of freedom is, right? Because Paul claims or makes the statement that he himself is a prisoner to Christ, right? This is something everybody needs to understand. Christians Christians will use these things because Christians love Paul's letters, but they won't follow Paul in his shackle position of the way he kind of gives everything he can to the Lord. Christians don't do that. They use Paul's letters and they say these different things. I'm a prisoner to Christ. I'm a slave. I'm a servant. Because what is explaining in these verses, a person in verse 9, we don't do according to our works, but according to his purpose and his grace, which the Lord has given us before the world began. So understanding that you yourself are a slave to the Lord, right? Paul understands that. Other people think that they're free, right? Now, some might disagree. I don't see how. But to me, um, freedom is a byproduct of slavery, right? Freedom is downstream from slavery or servitude. The world looks at it completely different, right? They move according to because slavery, right? Therefore, freedom. Because I can't do X, Y, and Z, I need more freedom. I need to move a certain way. If I can do this, this what to me sounds like or defines freedom for me. But Paul understands, which we'll hit later, Paul understands that freedom is a byproduct of servitude or slavery, right? I'll explain what I mean in a little bit. Let's go to Joshua chapter 10. Yeah, Jacob. Yeah, exactly. Jacob already going to Shalom, bro. Happy Sabbath, man. Um, Joshua chapter 10. This is the reason why I said when we open up a Matthew, right? The Lord tells you to gear your attention towards the birds. Don't be ignorant of the things around you. Pay attention. Joshua chapter 10, verse 8. Verse 8, exactly. Verse 8. And the Lord said unto Joshua, fear them not, nor have I delivered them into thine hand. There shall not a man of them stand before thee. So this is Joshua's taking down the five kings of the Amorites at the time, right? Is like I remember my boy Paraket told me years ago. Well, I think he said one of his favorite book, if I'm not mistaken. I hope I don't misquote him. Was Joshua, right? And it's interesting because when I went back and read Joshua some time ago, it's probably like 2, 3 years ago. It reads like a movie. Like it's very interesting. I think he had made the same comment. Because you read him on these like you watch him and you follow him on these this path of like warfare, and like he's not scared, he's not hesitant, he just consistently moves in the right direction, knowing the Lord's with him the entire way, right? And this is kind of like the same type of mentality we have to kind of pattern, because at times when things aren't going our way, we think God's jumped sides now, right? When things are going well, it's like, oh yeah, God's with me, I can see it, it's easy, right? You don't really, then that kind of shows you when things are going well for you and you think it's easy for you to believe that, and then you switch up when things are going bad. That shows you that you aren't really attributing the things that are going good in your life to God. It's just you're masking it as if you're masking it as God, but you think it's actually you deep down. Because when things go bad, you shift it to God. Oh, it's his fault. He's not doing X, Y, and Z for me. This is why you kind of got to be very careful how things are going in your day to day life, right? Joshua chapter 10, verse 9. Joshua therefore came unto them suddenly and went up from Gilgal all night. And the Lord discomforted them before Israel, and slew them with a great slaughter at Gibeon, and chased them along the way that goeth up to Betharon, and smote them to Azekah and unto Makkedah. And it came to pass, as they fled from before Israel, and were in the going down to Betharon, that the Lord cast down great stones from heaven upon them unto Azekah, and they died. And there were more which died with hailstones than they whom the children of Israel slew with the sword. So the Lord was really with him at the time, even showing them, demonstrating the things that the Most High is garnering in their favor. Verse 12. This is the point we want to take away. Verse 12. Then spake Joshua to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher? Not Jasher, not the Jasher written 16 years ago, not that Jasher. It just means the upright. So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and hasted not to go down about a whole day. And there was no day like that before it or after it, that the Lord hearkened unto the voice of a man. For the Lord fought for Israel. Now, this is the reason why I said when things change so much in your life on a day-to-day basis, a person has to understand the chaos. Like Joshua at the time is in war, right? Which is, I guess you can consider it. I know war is not really controlled chaos, right? I guess it can be in some instances, but it's war, right? Um, it's consistently changing from different directions, opponents, whatever it may be. But in your day to day, your chaos, what you're going through, your war, right? You have to understand, even though things seem to be off or odd or upside down, order still reigns supreme. Always. Always. Things are not outside of the Most High's control, even though our minds think like that all the time, right? That's why it's very imperative, no matter what you have going on, you cannot be vacillating between this side and this. Let's go to First Kings real quick. First Kings 18. Most people know this scripture, but let's read it for emphasis anyway. First Kings 18 and 21. And Elijah came unto all the people and said, How long halt ye between two opinions? If the Lord be God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him. And the people answered him not a word. So when you're going through different things, you cannot be the way the wind blows and you just shift over here and then shift over here and then shift over here. Because you start to think again. You have this weird perception or this weird thought in your mind. Like, when this isn't working, something's off, because normally I can control X, Y, and Z. You can't. That's an illusion. You do not have control, right? But the way things are set up, the way we're looking at Joshua, in the way he's asking the Lord to hold the sun still, right? This is another example of an extension of servitude or slavery in all realms. This is the reason why I mentioned again in Matthew 6, look at the birds, right? Let's go to 2nd Ezra chapter 6. These things on a day-to-day, it's crazy because that's why I said it's kind of like it's only supposed to be looked at as a positive, but it can feel like a negative, because you would think that the more somebody is flooded with something, the more they be aware of it. But then oftentimes you can get caught in a trap of it just being like, I'm not paying attention. It's just another day. This is what happened. This is what happened. I'm not. It starts to get to a routine where it's just like you start to see things or let things slip when you're not paying attention. But this is the reason why you can every single day go outside, Matthew 6, look at the birds. Look at the birds. These guys always hanging around. These guys always got something to eat. These guys ain't got no money. Got all these different things, right? And you see the exact same example every single day. You should never leave your house and forget it. But in our day-to-day life, it happens. But watch this. Creation, birds, Matthew 6, shows the same purpose on every level, right? 2nd Ezra chapter 6 and verse 39. Yeah, 39, I think. Sorry, y'all. 2nd Ezra 6 and let's say 39. Let's jump down to read all that. Verse 43. It says, "For as soon as thy word went forth, the work was made." So if you're going over, those that aren't familiar with 2nd Ezra 6, as you're going down, it starts to kind of bullet point the days of creation, right? Verse 43 says, "For as soon as thy word went forth, the work was made. For immediately there was great and innumerable fruit, and many and diverse pleasures for the taste, and flowers of unchangeable color, and odors of wonderful smell. And this was done the third day. Upon the fourth day thou commandest that the sun should shine, and the moon give her light, and the stars should be in order." Verse 46, "And gavest them a charge to do service unto man that was to be made." Service. Now that sounds very, very likely to a service or a servant or a servitude or a slavery, however you want to package it. I know slavery might sound to people might sound like a very harsh term, but make no mistake, if Paul's calling himself a prisoner and he's doing somebody else's purpose in his will, that's what you are. I don't care whatever words you want to switch up, that's exactly what it is. So even as the Lord is running down the bullet points and the things, or Ezra is running down the bullet points and the things that how creation was formed, he's showing you the process and the purpose of them all, right? Again, this is something you can't have this leave your mind, because this proves this is just a full circle thing that we're all starting to realize, hopefully, that we're coming back to. We're going to get to the point where you're going to get to the point where you're starting to understand, okay, this has been the game the entire time. And at the end, I have a choice to make, right? The purpose is gonna, well, I say it that way. The How do I word this? The execution is going to be the same, but it depends on how you want to exercise that, right? Um, let's go to Psalms 104. Psalms 104. Verse 10. Continuing with the thought of creation, right? This is I say this a lot. Um, but this is the reason why the Lord says things like in Sirach 3, don't worry about unnecessary things. I've given you a plethora of things to understand, or wisdom outside of the things that you aren't paying attention to, right? But you don't need to worry about all these things. You can't figure out the things I've showed you. This is the reason why, to me, it's so important, or it's very interesting to always look at creation, because creation gives you all these answers. Verse 10, "He sendeth the springs into the valleys, which run among the hills. They give drink to every beast of the field. The wild asses quench their thirst. By them shall the fowls of the heaven have their habitation, which sing among the branches. He watereth the hills from his chambers. The earth is satisfied with the fruit of their works, of thy works. You see how this is systematically running down one service to another, right? Verse 14. He causeth the grass to grow for the cattle, the herb for the service of man, that he may bring forth fruit out of the earth, and wine that maketh glad the heart of man, oil to make his face shine, and bread which strengtheneth man's hand. The trees of the Lord are full of sap, and the cedars of Lebanon, which he hath planted, where the birds make their nest. As for the stork, the fir trees are her house. The high hills are a refuge for the wild goats, and the rocks for the conies. So, like when you start to dive below layers, like in Genesis, right? In the very first chapter of Genesis, the Lord tells you, or Moses is writing for you the understanding of, this is going to bear seed, right? This fruit is going to come and it's going to bear seed or of its kind, right? There's a huge, many of them, but there's a huge theme throughout the Bible: the seed of Israel, this righteous seed, this wicked seed, a remnant. These things go back to the exact same thing. And you notice how fruit, when it's planted or something's planted with a seed, it replicates. It's the same thing. Replicates. The Lord's setting this system up for this genius design that we have to pay attention to, right? These things service one another, one after another, after another, after another. The waters come forth so the birds can drink. The trees pop up so the birds can have houses. You have oil for the man, wine for the man. All these different things flow in consistent order, and they're all in service to one another, right? There is no break in the chain, not even with the Most High. Because when you get to the highest level, which is the most high, he himself is doing things that services us. This is a systematic thing that goes up and down from the highest levels to the lowest. It's the exact same thing that shows us we're all connected, right? So this is something you have to pay attention to. All creation is going to be subject to someone or something, right? There is no way around this. This is the way the system works. This is the beautiful nature of the design. And until somebody tries to come in and interrupt that, but they're still not going to break the thread. It's just that service is going to go to somebody else who it shouldn't go to. Jump back a couple chapters, Psalms 100. Psalms 100, verse 1. Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all ye lands. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before his presence with singing. Serve the Lord with gladness and come before his presence with singing. Understand this, verse 3. Know ye that the Lord, he is God. It is he that hath made us, and not we ourselves. We are his people, and the sheep of his pasture, right? So oftentimes people get this in reverse. Like they take this and they flip it and they think, oh, well, uh, I've gotten this far because of me. I've done X, Y, and Z because of this. Now, how would a person make that statement, believe it? A person that has some type of intellect, how can you make that statement if you've done X, Y, and Z to get somewhere, but then the entire time that you were moving towards a particular goal that you might have set, you were leaning on the fact that the person that's allowing your heart to pump blood, that's allowing you to do X, Y, and Z, has decided not to pull the spiritual cord on you and allow you to continue to move 4 years to your degree, 15 years for a job, 30 years to retirement, whatever. You are always relying. There's always somebody behind you that can pull the cord on you whenever. You don't have no control. You think that this is why I said if you package it right, it sells. It sells perfectly, right? Because everybody wants to believe it. It's the same reason why Christianity is such a it's like a heroin level addiction of religion because it allows people whatever thought they have in their mind, Christianity allows them to ground it without foundation and then justify it. Whatever you want to come up with. Of course, everybody's going to say them. Yeah, I'm a Christian. Christ, Jesus died for my sins. I'm covered in the blood. God is good all the time, and all the time God is good. They haven't done anything. And behind the scenes, they're a serial killer. They haven't changed anything. That Jesus, that Jesus allows them to do whatever and accepts them no matter what. Nobody even. Most people in that find themselves in a situation like that with their parents. Like, right? If you're lucky. And they say unlucky too. If your parents don't have the capacity to stand up and tell you right from wrong, they themselves might not know. But some people might have parents that love them so much that they can do X, Y, and Z and be like, "That's still my son," or "My that." It could be very detrimental. But that's somebody that you know, like a mother's love or a father's love. Those things you rarely find on earth. God doesn't work like that, right? God is the correct way a father should lead, right? He understands mercy, he understands all these different things, and he really understands discipline. So a person in Christianity, you can't find discipline in Christianity. They'll repeat words, they'll use the book, they'll use the manuscript to say X, Y, and Z. But then when you call them out for being in contrary to what the scriptures say, then they'll have some religious justification as they always do. So they don't follow it, right? It's the same thing as you read like in people that call themselves Jews today, right? Jewish people will say the same thing today. They do X, Y, and Z, and they're, you know, all these different things that you see them do. I'm like looking and thumbing through the Torah or the Torah, and I'm like, man, it seems like a violation. That seems like a violation. That seems like a violation. How is it possible that you do all these different things and you're a Torah believing person? It doesn't make any sense, right? But we need to understand the process. Listen, the Lord is the one that's sitting back controlling all things. And this is the reason why the Lord says to you from the jump in Exodus 20, don't have no other gods before me, right? Because I said that there was something very implicit in Matthew 6 and 24. Let's go back there. Matthew 6 and 24. No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve God and mammon. Now, the implicit thing in that verse, obviously, you can't serve God and money, right? But a person is not able to serve two masters. But this is undeniable, right? You might not be able to serve two masters, but you will serve one. You will. There's no well, no, a person can't serve two masters, so I won't serve either one. No, no. This is where the people kind of get lost at when you talk to people on the street. When they think that they're like we're explaining to them good and evil, and they're trying to take the middle position as if I'm actually right down the middle. I'm like, there is no middle. There's a line, and then there's two sides, right? There is no third team. There's no. It's either you're on this side or you're on this side. Right? Christ said, if you're not for me, you against me. There is no middle ground. I'm gonna jump over here. I don't really fit that description. No, you do. You're on this side. You fit it perfectly, actually. Everything that you're saying fits the evil side perfectly, right? And people think that they can play this. I'm on this side. I'm actually not really a bad person. I'm really I'm really a person that kind of looks out for X, Y, and Z. And I'm just like, where'd you get that definition of good from? Well, throughout my life, I've been told I've been told things too. I found out years ago that I was evil as hell, right? So I've this is something you kind of got to look in the mirror and accept. That's just the reality of it. It's not. It is a hard pill to swallow maybe at the beginning, but the more you kind of gear towards the good and the right and the righteous thing to do, you start to get more and more frustrated with wickedness, right? And you don't really want to be the person you used to be. right? It's called being born again, as people always quote, but never do, right? Now, this is the reason why I said it's extremely dangerous if you package it the right way, right? Let's go to Revelation 18. Revelation 18 and verse 1. After these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Now, I was curious. We, in the context of it, you know what it means. Like a person can say something like, uh, "God is great," right? Keeping Passover is great. People can use those terms, right? And I know when I see things like Babylon the Great, I know what it's referring to. But I was curious, right? So I actually went and looked up this word, which is very interesting, right? I plugged in Blue Letter and I went and looked at this word specifically. Let me read this for you. It is Strong's G3173, right? This is the great after Babylon, right? The word is megas or megas. When you, if you do get a chance and you look it up, right? When you pull this outline Bible usage, go all the way down to the last, go all the way down to the last entry of the word. It's under 4:2, right? The last one says, of things which overstep the province of a created being. Proud things, presumptuous, full of arrogance, derogatory to the majesty of God, right? Of things which overstep the province of being of a created being. Meaning, this place that we're looking at, Babylon the Great or Mystery Babylon, it's calling it great because it has this specific characteristic, right? It has overstepped the bounds of what a create or a creature is supposed to do, right? This would be referring to yourself as a god or a person that is thinking himself as highly esteemed above his regular position, which he's supposed to hold from the jump of creation, right? Um, Shalom, Sadat, Messiah Christ bless, man. Happy Sabbath. The preacher today said he doesn't agree with abortion. And then he said, but if the mother's life is in jeopardy, then that makes it different. I asked for a scripture and didn't give one. Yeah, this is the fascinating thing about abortion. And it's like, man, it's crazy. Like, when you really start to dive deep into just basic logic, but when you have the scriptures to back you up, you can't really defeat the argument. It's either get on this side or lose, right? There's not really, you can have a debate for debate's sake, but you can't really come to a this is the reason why it's fascinating. Abortion is one of those topics where you have a conversation with somebody and then you're like, well, I don't agree with it. And somebody says, well, the proverbial, you don't have a womb, so you can't say anything. Yeah, okay. I'm sure that's the case. You use that rhetoric for, you don't say that about child support. You don't say that about domestic violence when men hit women. This is a ridiculous stance, but this is where you go down the rabbit hole of avoiding all kinds of logical entailments of what you're saying, right? So it'll usually be that one, or it'll be, what do you do with incest? What do you do with sexual assault, right? And then it's fascinating because all you have to do is call their bluff most of the time, right? You'd be like, well, look, let's say I'm the president, which is kind of a bad example to use because the president don't do anything anyway. But let's say I'm the king of the land, right? And I make the rules. And I said, you know what? I'm going to make abortions illegal except for incest, sexual assault, right? Except for that. Outside of that, I'm going to make it illegal. Or or like Sadak mentioned the example, or if it proves to be the mother's going to lose her life, right? Let's say I outlawed those three examples, and I said, "Would you agree that we can have abortion?" And they'd be like, "No, I don't agree with that." I'm like, "Well, so your point was you're only saying that because we know it's like 99% of them are from abortions of just being elective. Like you just want to do it because they want to have all the pleasure of sex and then avoid the consequences. We know that's the case. So it's fascinating when you bring this stuff up to people in their face, you realize it was just the little red herring they threw out there to win the argument. It's always the case, right? It's the reason why it's fascinating we had these conversations with people. It's the reason why I said when a line's drawn down the middle, you only have two sides. Pick one or the other, right? But America has done a wonderful job of packaging this thing as if this is freedom, right? And that great I mentioned in the blue letter talks about a creation going over its province or its position or its state, right? Um, and then a person like we read it in Acts 22 when a guy says, "I've paid a great sum for this freedom," right? You look it up. I looked it up earlier. It's $750 for U.S. citizenship, which is interesting because people always do that. They always compare America with other places and be like, "We have such freedom over here. You want to complain? Go to the East. Go to the Arab countries and see what you can do over, see what you can do over there. Go to Africa, X, Y, and Z, right?" As if this the old statement, two wrongs make a right. As if since it's bad over there, America is good, which doesn't make any sense. But $750 for US for your citizenship, right? Now, I looked this up as well. What does a citizenship get you? Just a couple bullet points here. Benefits of citizenship in the US. Now, you'll tell me if this is freedom, right? Voting, bullet point one, voting and running for office. Once you become a United States citizen, you can vote in local, state, and federal elections. Now, am I to believe that since I have a citizenship, am I to believe that since I'm an American citizen, voting is actually a freedom? Because the last time I checked, the people that are in high political offices, they don't have any power. They don't do anything. They give you false promises and they lie consistently. They get money and then they tax you to death. I don't understand how that would be a benefit to me or would slide under the banner of quote unquote freedom, right? Protection from deportation, bullet point two. If they decide to take you and say, "You're out of here," I don't care about a citizenship. It's the same thing about the idea of owning property, right? Until they do eminent domain. Or you bought your house, but then you still got taxes after that. And if you don't pay the taxes, I'll take your house that you paid for. I don't understand how this equates to freedom, right? Bullet point three, new financial opportunities. What opportunities? The more jobs you have, every single job you go get, the richer the so-called white man becomes. Because every single thing that you put your hand in, he takes it. Takes a percentage of it. Every time. Every single time. So it's like your actual existence in America is to have a job to make the guy richer ahead of you. That's what it's that's you can't unless you just be homeless, right? And then they'll try to pass laws to get you off the street. Bullet point four, freedom to travel. Is that right? When when the jab was being passed out, right? People lost their jobs. You have video clips going viral of nurses, all these different things, man. And this is America. They they mold it so well, and they put it on the media, and they make you believe all these different things. And it's fascinating because it's like you the like it's happening right now, right? When you see the first thing that these politicians attack when election comes up, they'll say X candidate wants to take away your freedom. Right? This is Obama wants to take away your freedom. Bush wants to take away your freedom. Clinton, whether Bill or Hillary, Trump, Kamala, Biden, Reagan, whoever it is, X candidate wants to take away your freedom. So vote for me. Well, we're hopefully, I am, those of us, I would assume that's in the truth, is starting to. I think we already understood it anyway, but it's becoming more crystallized as the days go on. As the more ads and ads come up that come on my side and I'll give you X, Y, and Z. I always use that example in the past of like, it's as analogous to when you were in school and a person wants to run for class president and they say things like, back in my day, gosh, I'm old. Back in my day, we had all sports, right? All sport machines, and people would say things like, "I'll just if you make me class president, I'll make sure I get more drink machines in the hallways. I'll make sure I do this." And it's fascinating that the term itself is president, class president. Knowing when that person becomes the president, they can't do anything. They don't have control of the budget. They don't have no say so in the hallways. They got to be on. They got to be at class on time when they get written up. They have no power. It's the same way these candidates portray themselves, right? Why is it that you want to hold a political office, but you have to have $45 million before you can get this? You can get the seat or get the vote to run. You can become the specific front runner for your party. What does money got to do with anything? Oh, lobbyists come in, and if you are not aligned with the lobbyists, well, they're the ones that have the money. They fund everything. Okay, well, I have to play ball. It's the only way. So now the line's drawn down the middle again. Either you're in office to be good, or you're what? Well, you have to play ball to get in here. No, that means you have to be evil. You have to compromise and do things that are in opposition to what's good. So the idea that our people consistently do this thing, when the Lord is bringing this thing full circle, and it's happening, it's clear as day, but millions of people still don't see it, right? So Deuteronomy chapter 28. Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse, I'm going to just read verse 48. I'll read verse 47. It says, because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness, right? Here we go again with the serving of the two masters. You're going to serve one. There is no, I'm just not going to play ball. No, one way or the other, you're going to. Because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart, for the abundance of all things, therefore thou shalt serve your enemies, which the Lord shall send against you in hunger, thirst, nakedness, and in want of all things. Now we're starting to circle back to this as we read this all the time on the street. This is one of the, entries, if you will, into the truth, along with Sirach 2 and 1, that you read about temptation and coming into the truth. And you start to understand as this is becoming more and more prevalent, that you're starting to witness the thing that you claim is freedom, the tyrannical government or the draconian regime that you're seeing in America. They're letting you know clearly, right? They're putting systems and taking things away to let you know clearly that we're heading into a time when you're going to have to come to me for food for we already do that now. But when they start putting parameters in place to where you can't, I just saw a video on Instagram probably about a month ago. There was a guy that owned a farm, and it's a white dude. There was a guy that owned a farm, and somebody from the state, I don't know how they, I don't know how they, they have their eye on everything, which is going to lead into the point. They found themselves to come to this guy's farm, and they had a clipboard and a checklist. And they ran down how many things that this guy had and how much he was producing on his farm. And they made him throw it away. Like, they sat there and they watched him as they checked it off. I think he was throwing cheese away, butter, and all those other things that he was having on his own. because, self-sufficiency is the enemy of slavery, right? So he was doing all these different things to keep himself self-sufficient, and they was just like, oh no, this violates the term of the state. So they came there and watched him throw his good food away, so that, I guess their explanation is, it's just a law in the books. I get what you're saying. I get your pushback. I know why you're upset, but it's just law, right? It's the same thing with the jab. Listen, you have your U.S. citizenship. I know. I paid a great sum for this. I'm free, so I should have the right to travel. Well, yeah, you do. Except, you have your COVID card. You should have. Oh, I don't have. Oh, well, I don't. Sorry, sir, you can't get on the plane. What do you mean? I'm a I'm a U.S. citizen. Well, we'll see how far that gets you. That $750 ain't really doing nothing for you now, is it? And this is why it's coming all the way back around to understand these principles. This Babylon, or this mystery place, has, as a creature, overstepped its bounds to the point where it has made himself God on earth. Same thing in Thessalonians, right? And even, let's go to 2 Corinthians 10. 2 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians 10 and verse 12. For we dare not make ourselves of the number, this is Paul, or compare ourselves with some that commend themselves, but they, measuring themselves by themselves, and comparing themselves among themselves, are not wise. And this is what everybody does. This is the general theme of this place. But we will not boast of things without our measure, but according to the measure of the rule which God hath distributed to us, a measure to reach even unto you. For we stretch not ourselves beyond our measure, as though we reach not unto you. For we are come as far as to you, also in preaching the gospel of Christ, not boasting of things without our measure, that is, of other men's labors, but having hope when your faith is increased, that we shall be enlarged by you according to our rule abundantly. Now, did Paul understood this, right? The man told, I'm free. Roman captain, I'm free. Paul says, well, listen, I was freeborn. I paid a lot of money for this. How'd you get this? Well, I was freeborn. Paul also calls himself a prisoner. I don't have no purpose except to serve the Lord, right? Paul also makes the statement, understands with that bounds of him being a prisoner to the Lord, he can't go beyond his measure. I'm not gonna commend myself and compare and contrast myself to the next man, because the next man is comparing himself to who? The next man, and then the next man, and the next man. And then when a person doesn't add up or follow what somebody might look at, continue to be the value of the measure of the next man, they'll just fall short, and then they'll still look at themselves in the mirror and be like, well, even though I compare myself to him and I don't really meet that criteria, I'm still great, right? But when you measure yourself up against something that is absolute perfection, you're going to understand to be humble all the time, because you're going to consistently fall short. But understanding that the adversity and the things that you fall short with keeps you in line, right? It helps you to understand. That's one of the reasons why Christ said in Matthew 9, those that are sick need the physician. You keep your mind always occupied with, I can always do better. I slipped here. I don't want to revert back to who I was 5 years ago, right? So these things are everyday, consistent working on itself. But the place that we live, this place, America, Babylon, hasn't done that. They've far exceeded or stepped out of the bounds that they consider themselves to be a particular person, or like the government always talks about how what's the phrase? We the people for the people. I mean, I don't even know. I'm not that old. I don't think I've ever seen that example. We the people. I've never seen that. It's not a democracy. It's what people claim it is. But that's what they say all the time. But Paul understood his bounds. Paul understands I'm not going to go outside of these measures because I'm a creature at the end of the day, right? And Proverbs chapter 28. Paul understands that he's a creature at the end of the day. It's the same thing with all of us. We're running down the same thing in Psalms 104. All these things work in succession to serve the purpose of something else. And this is what you're going to kind of start to kind of come to understand. We're getting to the point where, I mean, it's just genius by the Lord. We're getting to the point where you're going to understand, you're being put in a position to figure out who you're going to serve ultimately. Because if this system gets to the point where you got, either you're going to do X, Y, and Z and comply, or you're going to die, right? You're either going to serve the Lord or you're going to serve, as we know now, as a so-called white man. He's the one that's in power right now. But if you just want to take off that title and just say just men, whoever, because all of creation, like I said earlier, is in subjection to either something or someone. There is no escaping that. The sun, the stars, all those things are in service to man. Man's in service to God. Some people have themselves in servants to a woman. Men have, some women to women, some men to men. All these different things. This is the title of the class, is slavery is inevitable. You're funneling yourself onto one of two doors. Either you're going to ultimately understand that either the so-called white man is your God, or you're going to come to the understanding that, listen, I'm going to serve the real God because I know he controls everything anyway. But you're going to have to pick one way or the other. Proverbs chapter 28 and verse 1. The wicked flee when no man pursueth, but the righteous are bold as a lion. This is the reason why I said earlier, when the line's drawn in the sand, there is no third team. You're not going to hop between. When we have a conversation about righteousness or the scriptures and somebody wants to leave and get upset, I understand what side you're on. We don't have to talk any longer. You might not understand, and hopefully you can kind of, change course over time and kind of learn through your mistakes, hopefully sooner rather than later. But there is no, I'm not either one. No, there's only good or evil. So when you leave, when a conversation is being had about righteousness and what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to carry yourself, and you don't want to hear it, okay, cool. You're wicked. There is no third team, bro. You can't jump to some other team. Verse 2. For the transgression of a land, many are the princes thereof, or what's the Sirach 10, right? I think it's Sirach 10. We ain't gonna go there. For the transgression or the sin of a land, many are the princes thereof. But by a man of understanding and knowledge, the state thereof shall be prolonged. In other words, I don't need to alter the Most High's righteousness, right? It's perfect. By definition, you don't need to mess with it. It's perfection, as they say, is what's not broke. Whatever isn't broke, don't fix it. You don't need to. You don't need to bother with it. The Most High system is established in righteousness. He set it up. He is righteous. There's no tweaking that needs to be done. It's not a car that needs like regular maintenance. Doesn't need to happen. But if you have a system or a state in place where people keep cycling themselves out, that's like the sign of a bad company, right? The management keeps changing over and over again. Over the last 5 years, you've had 40 managers. But that doesn't sound like a good business. It's the same thing with America. Every 4 years, you got to rotate somebody out. I thought the principles should be the same. That's why politics is such a joke. But so many of our people are caught up in it because they think the scare tactic of the other side, I'm going to take away your freedom. You're not realizing you're not free at all. What is the definition of that? How is the definition of freedom being told where you can go specifically? And I'm not talking about, and this is the reason why I said earlier, freedom is downstream from slavery. Meaning when the Lord puts bounds on you, and a righteous God can do that, that is freedom. If you choose the reverse side of it, like America, and they just give you, which they really don't, but they give you free reign on sin, if you will, that's going to have to be reeled in some way, shape, or form. Because again, you start to go down the rabbit hole again. You're still a slave to your lust, or you're a slave to yourself. But that freedom that the Most High offers is something that is perpetual, is something that can be instituted for the health and the continuation of society. The other side that America offers can't do that. It's going to run down and destroy the system, which is already happening now. This is the reason why I said it's fascinating when you see people have conversations and they keep correlating How did Rome fall? Well, we need to realize from the ancient times, and we need to fix this. There's no fixing the broken system. Just because you have something what is more pronounced now, which is disgusting and deviant sexual behavior, that doesn't mean if you reel that in, America's great now. It was founded on chaos and murder. So the system needs to be uprooted, and the Most High has to fix something and put something in its place to sustain itself forever. America's over with. But our people are they're so caught up in Kamala's going to save everything. And if it's not for her, Trump's going to take away our freedom. And if it's not for Trump, Trump's going to give us freedom and Kamala's going to take everything. It's so ridiculous. You just, all you are a perpetual slave to the system. You think some man's going to fix something because he steps in and puts some flag on his shirt? I don't know, man. It just it becomes sad after a while because you would think that people of age would just be like, I mean, a teenager can figure this out, man. Excuse me. Hebrews 5. Uh, Happy Sabbath, sis. Most High Christ bless. Maya, happy Sabbath. Because of the jab, they keep people out of the military that refuse and later allow them to come back in. We the people, by the people. Thank you, Doc. Yeah, I don't. It's fascinating. Fauci comes on in front of everybody. Yeah, I kind of made the 6 foot rule up. Well, you seem like you could get people locked up at the time, but you know what's fascinating is if they've come out and they've all but, I mean, they've admitted it, but then they try to still cover it up. But if you will, for the sake of this, I'll word it this way: for they've all but admitted this pandemic was a hoax. They still, on commercials and ads, still push the jab. Still. And they don't have no problem still trying to hold you accountable for not getting it, even though they kind of told you it's not really real anyway. It's like a circus. Hebrews chapter 5 and verse, I'll just read verse 13 and 14. For everyone that uses milk is unskillful in the word of righteousness, for he is a babe. And this is um, upwards of 90 something percent of America. I don't care if you're Israel or not. They're This is just it. It's just on its face true. When you watch people and the way that they move and the way that they think, it's just embarrassing. And people don't have any. It's like they're worse than an infant. It's just, I guess, a sperm cell. Before you become a child, it's like that's what they are. An intellect or being able to be aware of certain things. That's why I mentioned earlier when we opened up class about Matthew 16 is a great opener for camp when you go certain places because they don't see the sign of the times. They're just kind of moving along and doing the same thing over and over again. Verse 14, but strong meat belongeth to them that are of full age, even those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern between good and evil. And nobody really has that now, right? Their radar is only focused on what's evil, but they call it good. It's kind of where we're at now at the end. John, just about done. John 19. John 19, verse 5. Then came Jesus forth, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. And Pilate saith unto them, Behold the man. When the chief priests therefore and officers saw him, they cried out, saying, Crucify him, crucify him. Pilate saith unto them, Take ye him and crucify him, for I find no fault in him. It is fascinating because even he's scared. Holds a position and he's scared, right? The Jews answered him, We have a law, and by our law we ought to die, he ought to die because he made himself the Son of God. Which is fascinating because Christ kind of already went over that in John 7, according to your law. When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he was the more afraid, and went again into the judgment hall, and saith unto Jesus, Whence art thou? But Jesus gave him no answer. This is something we need to pay attention to, especially in these times, right? Verse 10. Then Pilate saith unto him, speakest thou not unto me? Knowest thou not that I have power to crucify thee, and I have power to release thee? Jesus answered, Thou couldst have no power at all against me, except it were given thee from above. Therefore, he that delivereth me unto thee have the greater sin. So, this goes back to the idea of the Matthew 6 scripture of take no thought for your life, take no thought for the raiment, what's going to come tomorrow, all these other things, because you're not in control. You keep thinking you are, right? Pilate thinks he's in control. I don't know if Kamala or Trump believes that. They kind of know who they're working for. But the people behind them think they're in control, right? They control the money, the Fed, whatever it may be. Everybody thinks they have some form of control. And Christ understood it. I'm a slave in this system now because the Romans have control. But you're not in charge. Make no mistake about it. You're not in charge of the system. You're another pawn in the system. The time's running out for you. They got to wait for the sand through the hourglass for the Romans to lose power. But that's where we are. But now it's going to come down to the point where people are funneling. You're going to have, they always talking about the, what's the WEF? World Economic Forum, and they was talking about that. You're going to own nothing and be happy. They're trying to ban all flights by 2030. Nobody can get on planes. It's like, that's why I said the system itself we're looking at, it's like, it's just coming down to the Lord giving you like one last chance. You're going to serve somebody. Might as well be the God that holds all the cards and is on the winning side. But someone willfully choose the other side. They're doing it now, right? A person cannot justify why they would vote for another person. I don't understand why you would then cast a vote. But then they say, well, X, Y, and Z, she looked like me. I don't understand how that makes sense, my man. Well, Trump. Yeah, I don't. That's not answering the question about what's she gonna do. Knowing full well that the president is just another pawn, so it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know. 1 Corinthians 7. We'll close out here. 1 Corinthians 7 in verse 20. Let every man abide in the same calling wherein he was called. Art thou called being a servant? Care not for it, but if thou mayest be made free, use it rather. For he that is called in the Lord being a servant is the Lord's freeman. Likewise also he that is called being free is Christ's servant. Ye are bought with a price. Be ye not servants of men. And this is, I mean, it's kind of where we're at. It's sad because it's like the more you're looking at the times and stuff is changing, and it's like you feel like you're like an insane asylum, like you're the only person that, like, somebody locked you up. You have all your mental faculties, and somebody just decided to grab you off the street and just lock you up, and you're trying to convince the people that's crazy, like, do you understand you're crazy? And they're just like popping medication and just being like, no, I'm the most sane person in here. It's like, and you can't really get through to people, but you know that has a spirit at the end of the day. Because you don't have control over that. You can try and plant the seed, let the Most High do the rest. Um, that's where we're at. I guess you kind of, you got to kind of make sure that you're aware of how you're conducting yourself. It's always a good time to kind of sharpen your sword, if you will, and make sure that you're, what's the Ecclesiastes 10 about whetting the edge. Don't try to use more power and more force. Just make sure you're more crafty in the way that you're doing things, and way you have better ways to kind of escape and kind of keep your lust at bay, and understand how you're supposed to move, and you're not shape shifting and moving with everybody else in these last days, right? So the Lord's coming back soon. I don't know when that is. I don't know if it's 10. 2 years, 50 years. I don't know. But the signs here, fruits on the tree. It seems as if um, just something to be aware of. I pray his class made some sense to somebody. Keep praying for brothers and sisters you know. Keep praying for brothers and sisters you don't know. Pray for those that are in the world still. Hopefully they kind of see it come around. Pray for your own stability, man, because this ain't easy out here. But um, happy Sabbath, y'all. Most High in Christ bless. Um, Lord's will till next time. All right, shalom, y'all. Most High in Christ bless. Happy Sabbath.